So what we don't want to do is create a roulette wheel at graduation. You know how that is? It depends on which instructor you get. It depends on what kind of courses. You take it internet, you take it at night, you take it during the day, you take it in the fall when they happen to implement a new system and it didn't work well. Well, we don't need that. We need as much consistency across the board as we can get. Chronicle of Higher Education calls this positive restlessness. And it's actually defined as a willingness to continuously improve. Is that not the number one thing SAC says? Hey, you got to show continuous improvement. That's what you got. Number one, you got to show continuous improvement. So we're not talking about anything a whole lot different. We're back to, again, we're talking about with a whole lot more focus and passion. Now, it goes by a bunch of other names, but that's why the mandate is doing nothing is simply not an option. Let's simplify this. Let's say you had, I got a problem in the classroom. Matter of fact, I'll go back to when we first started this process years ago in the science division. We had a faculty meeting, and we were just going over student problems. We said, well, let's just talk about some student problems. I was on the board writing. Attendance, I remember, was number one. Okay, attendance. Number two, I think it was writing. Writing. And then we went on down the list. We got about 8 or 10 on the list, and then we stopped and went back. And we said, okay, let's go back to the first one. What's anybody doing about attendance? Dead silence. Well, what about writing? Anybody doing anything about writing? Dead silence. Immediately, we knew the problem. We knew what the problems were. We just didn't see it as our job to address them. So we started coming up with strategies. And we'll talk about some of those strategies in a minute. So doing nothing's not an option. If you say, well, I've got a problem in the classroom, first question you're going to get is what you doing about it. Not what your dean doing about it, what your president doing about it, what's the state doing, what are you doing about it? Your students, your content, your class, what are you doing about it? You won't solve the problem. We just want to make improvements in the problem. And you say, well, I tried so and so and so and so. Next question is going to be, how did it work for you? Well, it didn't work too good. Well, what you doing about it? You see how the cycle goes? And when you get folks answering them questions themselves, that's when you built a true leadership mentality throughout the organization. Goes by a bunch of different names, but every one of those names are the foundational definition of a professional in any field. So that's why our initiative is very simple. It's just I can. Improvement, constant, and never ending. Coined after a Tony Robbins phrase. The only thing I didn't like about his phrase back in the late 80s, it was can I? Constant, never-ending improvements. That sounds like a question. Can I? I don't know about that. Can I? We want to make an emphatic statement. I can. Improvement, constant, never-ending. And what kind of resistance can you get when all you're asking somebody to do is constantly improve? Let me change that. What kind of logical resistance can you get when you're asking somebody to? None. You may get a lot of emotional simply because it's change. But that's in every area associated with student learning. Now what that means is we have to have a paradigm change. And we're not talking about something, there's faculty all across the country that are already on board with this. But the change is we have to start evaluating based on learning and results. Same thing SAC says. You got to show us some student learning outcomes. You have to show us that they're attaining these competencies. We don't care about how much activity went on in the classroom. Everybody on campus is busy. We want to know about how productive are you. Not how busy you are, how productive are you. Because you know what it was, old school. If you go back to the old paradigm, and we're questioning, why you only had a 15% success rate in your class? What's going on? Well, it's not my fault. Look at these PowerPoints. I gave him his PowerPoints. I gave him his handout. I gave him his video. I did all this stuff. I did my job. I covered the content. There's not a coach on the planet that would say that. Can you imagine a coach getting up on Monday morning saying, you know what? It's not my fault they didn't play hard Saturday. I told them to. It's not my fault they were running around like they didn't know what the plays were. I gave them the handout, told them to study them. You'd be looking at the screen like, really? This has got to be the most incompetent coach on the planet. Why won't anybody pay a dime to hire this guy? And it's sad that we hear that so much in education. Not my fault. I told them what to do. You know, telling's not teaching. We're talking about a level of teaching that's well beyond telling. And that's what it requires. But the thing about it is the personal satisfaction, just the invigorating empowerment that comes with changing that strategy is worth it to us. Because this is especially true for professional development activities. Unless something has been put into action, nothing's been developed. So your question as you leave today would be, what are you taking that you heard about today and going to specifically do in the classroom in response to that? That would be an action plan.